My daughter called me at 1 o'clock in the morning. "Daddy, please open the door," she said, her voice shaking like leaves in a storm. "It's freezing out here." Now, that wouldn't be strange at all, except Keisha had been dead for 4 years. I stood there frozen by that front door, my old Nokia buzzing in the darkness like an angry wasp. Before I keep going, let me ask you something real quick. If you're watching this on your phone right now, hit that like button and subscribe. Stay with me till the very end here, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels, because it all started the night my landline rang while that old grandfather clock in my living room struck 1 o'clock, shattering the silence like glass hitting concrete. I was 68 years old, and at that age, you wake up at midnight to use the bathroom. Not because some phone's ringing in the dark. I opened my eyes, my heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to break free. The room was dim, that little lamp on my knitstand barely throwing shadows on the walls. Outside, rain was tapping on the roof, soft but steady. I reached out, fumbling for my glasses, and sat up slow. My knees were protesting every move like they always did these days. The phone rang again, faster this time, like whoever was on the other end was losing patience. I'm coming," I mumbled, my voice barely there, shuffling across the hall toward the living room. I was alone in that house too big, now that my Gloria had passed 5 years back, and my baby girl Kaisha 4 years ago. I reached for that white receiver hanging on the wall next to the TV. The ringing stopped just before my fingers touched it, and right when I was about to breathe easy, it started up again, sharp and urgent, right against my ear. I noticed my fingers shaking. I lifted it. "Hello?" My voice came out rough, like sandpaper. For a few seconds, all I heard was that distant rain, like the phone line was connected straight to the sky itself. Then a woman spoke, real soft. "Daddy?" I froze solid. That soft voice, with that little break at the end of her words, that was the same voice that used to call out from the kitchen when she was making her famous peach cobbler. "Daddy?" It was Kaisha's voice, clear as day. A chill ran straight down my spine. "Who is this?" I asked, trying to sound strong. "Who are you playing with right now?" "Daddy, it's me," she whispered. "Daddy, please open the door for me. It's cold out here." My legs turned to water. I thought it had to be a dream, some sick joke, or proof that I was finally losing my mind, like I sometimes feared when I prayed alone at night. "Don't play games with me," I said slow, trying to put bass in my voice. "My daughter passed away 4 years ago." On the other end, I heard a deep breath being held. Then that voice spoke a sentence that shattered every memory I had into pieces. "Daddy, whenever we get scared of the dark, we turn the light on inside our hearts." The world stopped spinning. We had made up that phrase together one night when the power went out during a thunderstorm, and Kaisha, still just a little girl in her Minnie Mouse pajamas, was crying in the pitch black. Since then, every time she got scared, I repeated those exact words to her. I never told another living soul. Never wrote it down nowhere. What? Who are you? The words barely made it out my mouth. "Daddy, it's Kaisha," the voice replied with a certainty that hurt deep in my chest. "I'm cold. Please open the door." I looked toward the entrance. From where I stood in the living room, I could see the outline of that front door frame. Something was pulling me toward it. My feet started moving on their own, that receiver glued to my ear like it was part of me now. "If you're Kaisha," I whispered, "tell me what color your first umbrella was." Brief silence. Then she answered without missing a beat. "Blue. A tiny blue umbrella you bought me at Belle Isle Park. We got soaked that day because you forgot your own umbrella. You were so mad at yourself, Daddy, but I laughed and laughed. I nearly dropped that phone." That memory was too sharp, too specific. I never told nobody that story, not even Gloria before she passed. I reached the door. The living room light barely touched the wood, and that porch light stayed off. I put my hand on the doorknob. "Where are you right now?" I asked, my voice thin as paper. "Right here, in front of the house," she answered. And her voice seemed to come from two places at once, from the receiver and real faint from the other side of that door. "Please open up, Daddy. I can't stand this cold." I slowly hung up the phone, set it down on the little table by the door. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my temples. I bent down and looked through that peephole, my breath fogging up the glass. I saw her. Kaisha was standing there under that drizzle. Soaked through, her dark braids pulled back in that same simple ponytail she always wore. That gray hoodie she loved so much was clinging to her body, wet as could be. Her face was pale, but it was the face I knew by heart, the one I looked at every single day in photos, in dreams, and on that headstone at Woodlawn Cemetery. She lifted her head, looking straight at the peephole like she knew I was watching. Our eyes met through that small glass circle. Her lips formed a little smile, that same smile she used to give me when she wanted to reassure me everything was okay. I saw her mouth form words without sound. "Daddy." Even though I couldn't hear it through the door, I knew what she said next. "Daddy, you still keep my letter behind the photo of your wedding, right?" I took a step back and stumbled against the wall. The letter. That small note she wrote when she was in elementary school, hidden behind the frame of my wedding photo with Gloria. Only she and I knew about that. Nobody else could possibly know that detail. I looked for something to grab onto. My chest was tight, breath coming in ragged gasps. Outside, that figure, whatever it was, tapped softly on the door with the same rhythm she used when she came home late from work and didn't want to wake me up. Tap, 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 tap. "Daddy, open up, please." The voice cut right through that wood like a knife through butter. Tears streamed down my cheeks. Nostalgia and terror twisted into one big knot in my stomach. How was it possible that a daughter I buried 4 years ago was standing on my porch in the middle of the night? I stood frozen for seconds that felt like forever. And finally, I did the only thing I could think of. I turned that lock. The door creaked as I opened it just a few inches. On the other side was only cold, damp night air. I held my breath behind that crack. The wind blew in, smelling like wet earth and motor oil. There was nobody there. Not Kaisha, not anyone. Just the dark yard, that fine drizzle, and the leaves of my oak tree moving slow in the breeze. "Kaisha?" I whispered. No answer. No more taps. The phone on that little table had gone silent as a grave. I closed the door again with shaking hands. Threw that deadbolt twice, like I could lock all the fear outside. My chest was burning. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath. Maybe it was a dream, I thought. Maybe I'm awake, but my mind's still lost in some nightmare. I went back to the bedroom. That clock kept ticking, each second louder than before. I sat on the edge of my bed with the light on, staring at nothing. I don't know what time exhaustion finally took me under in the morning. Sunlight filtering through the curtain hit my eyes like a slap. My head felt heavy, neck stiff, and I had this strange feeling, a mix of exhaustion and anxiety sitting on my chest like a weight. For just a moment, I wanted to believe it had all been one long, confusing dream, until I opened the front door. As I turned that lock, cold morning air rushed in, smelling of damp earth and last night's rain. I lowered my gaze to the porch floor. There were marks. Wet footprints on the concrete, small, bare footprints, like someone had been standing right in front of my door for quite a while, shivering in the cold. I gripped that door frame tight to keep from falling. My heart started its frantic race all over again. The tracks stretched a bit toward the gate and disappeared where the pavement had already dried. On the doorknob, I saw the faint smear of a damp hand that had darkened the metal. I swallowed hard. If it was all a dream, why were the footprints still there? Deshawn, you just need some sleep, I told myself out loud, using my own name like my mama used to scold me when I was a boy. You're old. You think too much. Don't believe everything you see. But that cold dread at the back of my neck didn't go away. Around 9 o'clock, my gate bell rang. I jumped like I'd been shocked and looked out the window. It was Mr. Washington, my neighbor, with his tiger's cap tilted and his work boots still muddy. Beside him stood Mrs. Washington, holding a plastic grocery bag from Major. I went out onto the porch, trying to smile. Morning, Mr. Washington, Mrs. Washington. Morning, Deshawn. Everything all right? He replied, squinting at me. I saw your living room light on around 1 o'clock last night. Something happened? I said I'd forgotten to turn it off, that it was nothing. Just having trouble sleeping, I added, rubbing my face. Don't think so much, Mr. Washington advised, shaking his head. At our age, if you keep turning things over in your head, you'll end up sick, brother. I brought you some collard greens from Eastern Market, Mrs. Washington said, handing me the bag with a warm smile. Fresh picked yesterday. I thanked them, inviting them in for a moment, though my eyes kept drifting back to those footprints on the porch already. Nearly faded by the morning sundot, we sat in the living room on my worn leather chairs. But I couldn't hold it in for long. Mrs. Washington looked at me close. Deshawn, why are you so pale? Did something happen to you last night? I hesitated. Then, without knowing why, I started talking. Didn't tell them everything, but I told them enough. The call at 1 o'clock, the voice that sounded just like Kaisha, the tapping on the door. Must have been such a strong dream that it bled into your waking life, Mr. Washington said, trying to make me feel better. Happens to me sometimes. I dream my mother's alive, and when I wake up, I swear I can smell her perfume on the pillow. It's just grief, man. Just grief. Mrs. Washington nodded slow. Pray on it, Deshawn. Ask the Lord to calm your heart. And if you need to, go see somebody professional to talk to. A counselor or something. It'll do you good. I smiled, though deep down, I didn't fully believe their words. We said our goodbyes, and when that gate closed again, the house returned to its silence. The footprints on the porch had completely disappeared, dry as bone, like the night had just evaporated at noon. Dr. Marcus Bennett arrived. His black Mercedes stopped right in front of the house. He got out light blue shirt, perfectly pressed, dark slacks, leather messenger bag over his shoulder. His fade was fresh, his goatee trimmed sharp. Too perfect, like always. Good afternoon, Pops, he said, shaking my hand with that firm grip. Sorry to drop by without calling first. Had a client cancel, thought I'd check on you. I let him in. His cologne, something expensive and subtle, filled the living room. On the wall, the photo of Kaisha and Marcus's wedding stared back at us. She was glowing in that white dress. He had his hand on her shoulder, looking proud. Mr. Washington told me you've been losing sleep, Marcus commented, sitting across from me in the armchair. What's going on with you, Pops? I hesitated, but I ended up telling him the story, this time with more details. The secret phrase, the vision at the door, those wet footprints. Marcus's face barely changed. Sometimes he nodded like he was taking mental notes, that therapist look on his face. You're still carrying a lot of pain, he finally said, using that smooth voice he used on his podcast interviews. It's normal, Pops. The brain can create a whole lot of things when you miss someone and feel guilty about it. I'm not hallucinating. Marcus, I whispered, my voice tight. Those footprints were real. Maybe it was a neighbor, he replied calmly, or some kid passing by barefoot. But the call? In my professional opinion, that's memories resurfacing. You and Kaisha were close, real close. And she died unexpectedly. You haven't finished making peace with that guilt you carry. I looked at him, not sure whether to feel offended or understood. Look, Pops, he continued, leaning forward. I can help you. Not as a son-in-law, but as a therapist. Come to my clinic. We'll talk, just talk. This doesn't mean you're crazy. It means you don't have to carry this weight alone. I don't want to be filled up with pills, I said quickly, shaking my head. He smiled that professional smile. We'll start just by talking. If it's necessary, I'll introduce you to a psychiatrist I respect. But step by step, okay? He pulled out a small notebook and wrote something down. I'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I've already reserved the hour for you. I nodded. More out of obligation than agreement, Dot. After talking about nothing important for a while, the Pistons game, the weather he left. Before walking out, he brushed his hand against the frame of Kaisha's photo. Real gentle. I miss her as much as you do, Pops, he murmured. Me too, I managed to say, though something in my gut didn't sit right, Dot, when he closed that door. The house filled with that heavy silence, the kind left by someone who seems caring, but takes all the air with them when they go, Dot, to distract myself. I started cleaning up the living room bookshelf. Hadn't seriously touched it in years. I took out some old books, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, a worn Bible. Suddenly, a stack tilted and something fell from way in the back, hitting the floor with a soft thud. Dot. It was a cream-colored envelope, slightly yellowed with age. My heart jumped into my throat. I recognized the handwriting on the front immediately. To Daddy, don't get mad until you finish reading. Kaisha's handwriting, clear as day. Dot. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, dated 2 weeks before the accident. My daughter's slanted cursive filled the page. Dot. It began, Daddy, I don't know who else to talk to. I'm afraid you'll get angry, but I'm more afraid to stay quiet. I swallowed hard and kept reading. Kaisha wrote that she believed Marcus was cheating on her, that he was too close with a client, a young woman who kept coming to his office for sessions that ran way too long. She said he was coming home late, sometimes lying about his schedule, getting defensive when she asked questions. When she confronted him, he'd get angry and call her dramatic, jealous, paranoid. I'm scared, Daddy, she wrote in shaky letters. He's controlling me more and more. He doesn't like me coming to your house often. Says you make me weak, that you make me too dependent. He doesn't want me to work outside the home. Says taking care of the house is enough. If something ever happens to me, please don't believe everything Marcus says. I love you, Daddy. I closed that letter, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped it. The world around me seemed to shrink, walls closing in. It hurt to breathe. Guilt hit me in waves, crashing over and over. I had always thought well of Marcus, attentive, helpful, successful, always willing to drive me to doctor appointments. I always believed Kaisha was just being too sensitive, too suspicious. And my baby girl had left me this sign that I never saw, because I never moved those damn books. I looked up at their wedding photo on the wall. His hand on her shoulder, what I'd always seen as love suddenly looked like something else. Control. Possession. My cell phone buzzed on the table. A text from Marcus. Pops, 3 o'clock tomorrow. Don't forget. See you at the clinic. I stared at that screen for a long time. I heard Kaisha's voice from the letter, and that voice from 1 o'clock in the morning saying, don't trust Marcus. It was too much to call it coincidence. For the first time since Kaisha died, I felt like something was truly wrong, and I couldn't pretend not to see it no more. I couldn't stay still in that house. My daughter's words kept pounding in my head like a drum. If something ever happens to me, don't believe everything Marcus says. That afternoon, I decided to go to the cemetery. The Detroit sky was heavy with clouds, but it wasn't raining. Cold, crisp air cut at my face as I stepped off the DDOT bus. I walked through rows of graves at Woodlawn Cemetery to Kaisha's plot, near the back by a big oak tree with branches that spread wide like protective arms. I stood in front of that headstone. Her name was carved clear and deep. Below it, the dates of her birth and death numbers that still cut like a knife every time I looked at them. Kaisha, I whispered, bending down slow, my knees cracking. If you're still mad at me, baby girl, you got every right. But don't torment me like this. I straightened the faded plastic flowers in the small vase at the base of the stone. That's when I saw something at the foot of the grave that shouldn't have been there. A small, old doll with a faded red dress. Worn fabric, one button eye hanging loose. I recognized it instantly. It was the doll Kaisha had when she was just a little girl, the one she named Ruby, after her grandmother. She said Ruby had to stay with me in the house because it was safer there, protected. Since Kaisha died, I kept that doll in a memory box in my bedroom closet, wrapped careful in tissue paper. I had never brought it to this cemetery. Not once. My throat closed up tight. Impossible, I whispered, picking up the doll with shaking hands. The fabric was damp from the morning dew, but it was Ruby. No question. I rushed back home as fast as my old legs could carry me, that doll clutched to my chest. Soon as I got inside, I went straight to the bedroom closet, pulled down that plastic storage box where I kept Kaisha's things, baby clothes that still smelled like her, elementary school report cards with gold stars, birthday cards she'd made me with crayons and glitter. I rummaged through everything, my heart racing. The doll in the red dress was gone. The spot where Ruby always sat, wrapped in tissue, was empty. I dropped to my knees on that floor, breathing in choked sobs. If I hadn't taken her out, who had been in that box? Marcus never cared about these things, never asked about keepsakes or memories. Other folks didn't have access to my house. Or had it been Kaisha herself, the one who called on that phone, who said she was trapped somewhere between life and death? A loud knock on the front door made me jump so hard I hit my head on the closet shelf. Uncle Deshawn. A young man's voice called out. It's me, Jamal. I suddenly remembered. My nephew, my younger brother Raymond's boy, had promised that if he ever had work nearby, he'd stop by to check on me. I opened the door, still holding that doll. There stood Jamal denim jacket, black backpack slung over one shoulder, lokes pulled back in a ponytail. He looked just like Raymond did when we were young, same wide smile and curious eyes. Hey, Uncle D, he grinned. Sorry to surprise you like this. I was recording a podcast interview at the community center down the street. Thought I'd swing by. His eyes dropped to the doll in my hands, and his smile faded. Uncle D, you okay? You look like you seen a ghost. I led him into the living room. He set down his backpack and sat on the couch. His eyes went straight to Kaisha's photo, on the wall, her in her nursing scrubs, that bright smile lighting up the whole picture. Still hits me to see her there, he said softly. Feels like just yesterday she was teaching me how to edit audio for my first podcast episode. I managed a faint smile. You talk just like your daddy did, I said. Always asking questions, always digging. He chuckled, but it was hollow. After talking about light things for a bit, his podcast growing, his girlfriend, the Pistons losing again, I ended up telling him everything. The 1 a.m. call, Kaisha's voice, the footprints, the doll, the letter I found behind those books. Jamal's face turned serious, real serious. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Uncle D," he said slowly, carefully. "This sounds exactly like the cases I cover on Detroit Dark Secrets. Stories that look like normal accidents on the surface. But there's something rotten underneath. You think Kaisha's death wasn't an accident?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We gotta be careful," he replied. "I don't want to accuse nobody without evidence. But that letter? That's crystal clear. She suspected infidelity. She spoke about control and manipulation. Those are huge red flags, Uncle Deej." "But Marcus is a therapist," I said, almost defending him out of habit. "He's a good man, educated, successful, helps people." "Precisely because he's a therapist, Uncle," Jamal interrupted, his voice firm. "He knows how to manage people's minds better than anybody. He knows exactly what to say, so everyone believes him. That's his whole job, getting inside people's heads." I sighed, long and heavy. "So what do I do, Jamal? What can an old man like me do? Do you have the accident file?" he asked. "Newspaper clippings? Police reports? Anything?" I nodded. Went to my bedroom and came back with a brown accordion folder I kept in my dresser drawer. Photocopies of news articles, the police report. Some photos I always hated looking at Kaisha's car. Totaled and burned on the side of the road. Jamal spread them out on the coffee table, his eyes scanning quick from one paper to the next. That journalist brain working fast. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a news clipping from the Detroit Free Press. "Says they found strange skid marks at the scene, and that the airbag didn't deploy when it should have. They called it a possible system malfunction." I read that at the time, I admitted, but I didn't understand what it meant. I was too torn up to think straight. The police wrote it down as possible system failure and closed the case, Jamal summarized, his jaw tight. "But Uncle D, in a lot of cases I've investigated, airbags are deliberately disabled. It's a common trick when someone wants a crash to look like an accident. Makes the impact way more deadly." My skin went cold all over. "You think Marcus would be capable of that?" I whispered. "I'm not saying that yet," he said carefully. "I'm just saying we can't rule anything out. When you got infidelity, control, power, and money involved, Kaisha had that life insurance policy, right? You got motive. Strong motive." I looked at that black and white photo of Kaisha's Honda Accord, crushed against a concrete barrier, the front end charred black. I felt sick to my stomach. "Will you help me find out the truth?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Absolutely," he replied, no hesitation. "Case aside, Uncle D, this is for Kaisha. This is for family." That afternoon, Jamal started making calls. He had contacts everywhere, friends who worked at local TV stations. An old college buddy who'd interned at Detroit PD. A mechanic who specialized in accident reconstruction. "Here it is," he said after a while, pointing to his laptop screen. The police considered further investigation, but the family didn't file a complaint. The husband, Marcus, accepted the report as is and didn't push for more. Everything got closed real quick. I remembered those days in a fog. I was too devastated to think about anything except getting through each hour. Marcus handled everything, the funeral arrangements, the paperwork, the insurance claims. I just signed whatever he put in front of me, tears blurring the words. It was getting dark when Jamal finally packed up his things, promising to return with more information. "Uncle D, if anything weird happens, anything at all, you call me immediately. Don't be alone with Marcus if you can help it." "I got an appointment with him tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I said. Jamal's face darkened. "Cancel it. Or let me come with you?" "I can't cancel," I replied. "If I do, he'll know something's up. I'll be careful." "Then record everything on your phone," Jamal insisted, pulling out his own phone to show me how. Just hit this button here before you go in. Audio only is fine. Just get him talking. If he says anything about Keisha, the accident, anything suspicious, we got evidence. He left on his motorcycle, old Harley, that rumbled loud enough to wake the whole block. I watched him ride off into the evening, his taillight disappearing around the corner. The house fell silent again. But this time, I didn't just feel sadness. I felt anger hot, burning anger against Marcus, against myself, against everyone who convinced me it was just a simple tragedy when maybe, just maybe, it was murder. That night, sleep was impossible. I tossed and turned, thinking about the cemetery, the doll, the letter, the brakes, the airbag. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Keisha's face, not peaceful, but questioning, asking me why I didn't see the truth sooner. I looked at the clock on my nightstand. It read 12:58 a.m. 2 minutes to 1:00. My heart started beating faster, blood rushing in my ears. I looked toward the living room from my bed, could see that landline phone sitting on the side table through the dark hallway. The night before, its ring had sounded like a scream. It's impossible, I whispered to the empty room. It's not going to happen again. The clock flipped to 12:59, then 1 o'clock. The grandfather clock in the living room chimed once, deep and hollow. And right after, the phone started ringing that sharp, old-fashioned ring slicing through the silence like a blade. I nearly fell out of bed in shock. My knees were weak, but I forced myself to walk quickly down that dark hall, breathing hard and ragged. I picked up the receiver with a cold, trembling hand. "Hello, Daddy." It was Keisha's voice again, lower this time. Raspier, like it was coming from very far away. Through water or fog. "Why are you doing this to me?" I asked, my eyes filling with hot tears. "If you're really Keisha, why didn't you come when I was losing my mind 4 years ago? Why now? Why torture me like this?" On the other side, I heard a long sigh, sad and tired. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she said, her voice small. "I was trapped. I couldn't come back before now." "Trapped where?" I demanded, my voice rising. "What does that mean?" "Between life and death," she answered, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I can't leave because there's something unresolved." "Someone's holding me here. Who?" I asked, though a name was already stabbing into my brain like a knife. There were a few seconds of silence, just the sound of that distant rain through the phone line. Then, barely a breath, she whispered, "Don't trust Marcus." I went completely silent. The living room felt like it was shrinking, walls pressing in. "If you're really Keisha," I said, my voice shaking but firm, "give me proof. Give me something concrete. I'm old baby girl. I can't handle scares and games. I need something real." She took a deep breath on the other end. I could hear it clear as day. "Go to the place where I was born, Daddy," she whispered. "The place where you saw me for the first time. They hid something there. Look for my name." I pictured the small clinic where Gloria had given birth to Keisha decades ago, East Side Community Clinic, in a rough part of town that had seen better days. "What am I looking for?" I asked urgently. "Keisha, what?" But the call suddenly cut off. No dial tone, nothing. Just the tick-tock of that grandfather clock and my own heavy breathing filling the silence. I gently put the receiver back, leaning hard against the wall for support. In my head, pieces were starting to connect the strange accident. The letter, that client Marcus mentioned who didn't feel part of her family. The clinic where secrets might be buried. That night, my fear changed shape. I wasn't so scared of a ghost anymore. I was scared of the possibility that the last 40 years of my life were built on a lie, that maybe, just maybe, there was more to my family than I ever knew. The next day, I wouldn't just go to Marcus's appointment. I'd go to that clinic first, and I'd force whoever I needed to speak the truth. The next morning was gray and cold when Jamal and I got on the city bus heading east toward the old neighborhood. East Side Community Clinic sat on a corner that time forgot faded brick building, bars on the windows, a hand-painted sign so old you could barely read the letters. "You sure you can handle this, Uncle D?" Jamal asked, gripping the rail as the bus lurched forward. "I've been quiet for too long," I replied, staring out the window at passing houses, some boarded up, some with bright murals painted on the sides. "If I don't do it now, I never will." We got off near a corner store with a "We Accept EBT" sign in the window and walked down a cracked sidewalk. At the end of the block stood that old clinic building. The paint was peeling off in strips. The small parking lot was empty, except for one rusty Buick. At the front desk sat a middle-aged black woman with gray streaks in her hair, glasses perched on her nose, wearing a cardigan against the cold. Her name tag read Sharon. "Excuse me, ma'am," I said, approaching the window. "I'm Deshaun Williams. My wife Gloria gave birth here back in the 80s. I'd like to see the birth records from that date, if that's possible." She looked up, her eyes tired but kind. "Oh, sir, those are real old records," she said slowly. "Files from that time are in the back storage room. Not all of them held up well. We had a flood years back, messed up a lot of papers." "I understand," I said firmly, "but I need to see them. It's important." She sighed, studying my face for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right. Y'all better come with me so we can look together. Easier that way." We followed her down a narrow hallway that smelled like old paper and mildew. She unlocked a door to a cramped room filled with metal shelves stacked high with brown folders, some crooked, some water-stained and falling apart. "These are from that decade," Sharon said, gesturing to a whole section. "But I should warn you, the doctor who handled most of these births passed away some years back. Dr. Samuel Hayes. He died back in 2015. That name sent a cold spike through my chest. I vaguely remembered him, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, soft voice, quick hands during the delivery. We started searching, pulling out folders one by one. Jamal read the dates on yellowed labels, squinting in the dim light. After what felt like forever, he said, "I think this is it. Uncle D." He held up a folder with the exact date of Kaisha's birth written in faded ink. Inside were handwritten forms, the kind they used before everything went digital. One paper read, "Mother, Gloria Williams. Father, Deshaun Williams." In the box for number of infants delivered, there was a 1 written clear. But above it, if you looked real close, you could see the shadow of another number that had been erased and written over. It looked like someone had originally written something different, then tried to cover it up. "This ink is old," Jamal said quietly, holding the paper up to the light. "But you can still see it. Looks like it used to say something else before they changed it to 1. My throat burned. "What does that mean?" Sharon came closer, frowning as she looked at the paper. "I can't say for certain," she admitted. "I didn't work here back then. I only started in the 90s. But I can tell you there were rumors. Years ago, people whispered about Dr. Hayes doing things under the table. Something about adoptions that weren't exactly ... legal." "Adoptions?" I repeated, barely able to get the word out. "That's what folks said," Sharon confirmed, her voice dropping low. "But nothing was ever proven. Back in those days, things like that got buried real quick. Nobody wanted trouble. Not the families, not the clinic, not the city." "Was there another birth that same day?" Jamal asked, his investigative instincts kicking in. "Another baby born?" Sharon checked other sheets in that same folder, flipping through stained pages. According to this, there was only one birth recorded that day, she said. But look here. She pointed to a small code written in the corner, and another strange mark that looked like it had been crossed out and rewritten. This is real strange. The numbers don't line up right. What does that mean? I asked, my voice shaking. Could mean clerical error, she said carefully. Or it could mean someone was changing records on purpose. Jamal and I locked eyes. The implications were hanging heavy in that cramped, dusty room. A few years back, Sharon added quietly, an elderly black couple came here asking about births from that same time period. Said their daughter was adopted through this clinic, through Dr. Hayes specifically. They wanted to find the birth mother. I checked everything I could find. Nothing in the official records matched up. Just loose notes and weird codes like this. They left real disappointed. The silence in that room was thick enough to choke on. Could I get copies of these papers? I finally asked, my mouth dry. Of course, baby, Sharon said gently, sympathy in her eyes. Let me make them for you right now. We left that clinic 15 minutes later with several photocopies clutched in my hands. The wind outside was colder now, biting through my jacket. On the bus ride back, I stared at those papers again and again, the corrected number, the strange codes. Dr. Hayes's signature at the bottom got the word adoption spun in my head like a record stuck on repeat. Uncle D, Jamal said carefully, keeping his voice low so other passengers wouldn't hear. It's highly probable that something was hidden the day Aunt Gloria gave birth. You understand what I'm saying? You think there was another baby besides Kaisha? I whispered, my throat tight. I don't want to jump to conclusions, he replied. But the possibility is there. And the one person who knew the truth for sure, Dr. Hayes, he's gone. I stared out the bus window, watching Detroit roll by the burned-out buildings next to new coffee shops. The old folks sitting on porches next to young people with laptops. A city of contradictions, just like my life had become. How is it possible that I, a father, didn't know if I brought more than one daughter into this world? We got back to my house as evening was falling. Jamal needed to get home to edit his podcast and dig deeper into the accident files. Don't open the door for anybody you're not expecting, he said firmly before climbing onto his motorcycle. And Uncle D? Record that session with Marcus tomorrow. Everything. Don't forget. I won't, I promised. When he rode off, that Harley rumbling loud down the quiet street, the house seemed even bigger and emptier than before. I tried to make myself some dinner, fried some chicken, made rice, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept returning to that clinic, to Dr. Hayes, to that couple who'd left with empty hands and broken hearts. As night fell heavy over Detroit, I turned on every single light in the house. Normally, I was frugal, watching my electricity bill. Tonight, I didn't want a single shadow in any corner. A little after 8 o'clock, I heard the sudden screech of tires outside, followed by the horrible crash of metal hitting pavement and several people shouting. I rushed out to the porch, my heart in my throat. Down the street, neighbors were gathering around someone lying on the ground next to a fallen motorcycle. I recognized that denim jacket, that backpack scattered across the road. Jamal, I yelled, my voice cracking. I ran as fast as my old legs could carry me, my knees screaming in protest. He was on the ground, his face twisted in pain, one leg bent at a wrong angle. Uncle D, he gasped when he saw me, trying to smile through the pain. My brakes, They went out. Just stopped working. Did somebody call 911? I shouted to the crowd. Ambulance is on the way. One of the Washington's nephews called back. Jamal squeezed my hand tight, his grip strong despite the pain. Uncle D, listen, he gasped out. Don't lose my backpack. Everything's in there, all my notes, the recordings, the contacts. Keep it safe. Don't worry about that now, I said, tears running down my face. Just hold on, nephew. Hold on. The ambulance arrived within minutes, sirens wailing. They loaded Jamal onto a stretcher, his face pale but conscious. I wanted to ride with him, but he shook his head. Stay home, he said through gritted teeth as they lifted him up. I'll text you from the hospital. Uncle D, his eyes locked on mine, urgent and afraid. Be careful. This wasn't an accident. I walked back to my house in a daze, that heavy backpack slung over my shoulder. In a matter of hours, I'd discovered my wife's delivery wasn't what I thought. And now my nephew had nearly been killed, because his motorcycle brakes suddenly failed. Just like Keisha's car brakes had failed 4 years ago. I left the backpack in my bedroom and sat for a long while. In the dark living room, just breathing, trying to make sense of everything. Finally, I got up, took a hot shower to calm my nerves. My hands still shaking under the water dot with my hair still damp. Wearing my old robe, I walked into the dining room, drying my hands with a kitchen towel, and stopped dead in my tracks. Someone was sitting at my dining table with their back to me. A woman, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing that gray hoodie, shoulders slightly hunched. On the table in front of her were 2 cups of tea, steam still rising from both. I stood frozen, unable to move or speak. The woman slowly turned around Dot. It was Keisha's face, exactly as it was in the last years before she died. No wounds, no blood, no ghost-pale skin. Just that calm, slightly sad expression I knew so well. Daddy, she said softly. Sorry for coming in without asking. I hope you don't mind. I didn't know whether to scream or collapse right there on that dining room floor. Keisha, is that really you? I stammered, gripping the doorframe to stay upright. She smiled slightly, tilting her head. What do you want me to be, Daddy? She asked quietly. If you want me to be just a dream, I can disappear right now. If you want me to be real, I'll stay sitting here. Her words were strange, but my head was too full of confusion and fear to analyze them. I only saw how she held that teacup index and middle fingers on the handle, thumb up, other 2 fingers supporting the bottom. Exactly like Keisha always did. She gestured to the chair across from her. Sit down, Daddy. You went to the clinic today. You must be exhausted. I sat down like a puppet on strings, my legs moving on their own. Did you know? I asked, my voice cracking. Did you know about the clinic? About what they did? I know a lot of things, she replied slowly, staring into her tea. They lied to you, Daddy. They took something precious from you. And the person you trust most has been lying ever since. I looked at her closely. She was identical to Keisha, same smooth brown skin, same beauty mark above her lip, same gentle eyes. But there was something subtly different in the way she held herself, the way she looked at me. I don't understand, I murmured, exhausted. What are you? A spirit? A hallucination? Another daughter? I'm old, baby. Don't play with my head no more. She lowered her eyes for a moment, and when she looked back up, tears were forming. Whatever I am, she said softly, there's one thing that doesn't change. I'm on your side, Daddy. Always have been. She turned slightly toward the front door, as if listening for something. He's not going to stop until he silences you. You know that, right? At that exact moment, someone knocked hard on the door. Loud, urgent. Pops. It's Marcus. You home? I looked back at the woman. The chair across from me was empty. The teacup was still there, steam rising into the air like a ghost itself. I stood up on shaky legs, grabbed that cup, and rushed it to the kitchen sink. My hands were trembling so bad I nearly dropped it. I took a deep breath, wiped my face with my sleeve. and walked to the front door. I opened it to find Marcus standing there, disheveled for the first time I could remember. His shirt wrinkled, sleeves rolled up, face tight with worry or something else I couldn't read. "You took forever to answer," he said, his eyes sharp. "You scared me, Pops." "I was in the bathroom," I lied, my voice flat. His eyes swept past me into the house, searching. "You alone?" "Yeah." He stepped inside without being invited, his gaze moving from the dining room to Kaisha's photo on the wall, then back to me. "Did you hear about Jamal?" he asked suddenly. My heart stopped, even though I already knew. "What happened?" "He had a motorcycle accident just down the street," Marcus explained, watching my face carefully. "I drove by about an hour ago, saw all the commotion. Neighbors said his brakes failed. He's at Detroit receiving now. Even though I'd been there, my body reacted with fresh horror." "Is he okay?" "Broken leg, some bruises, but he'll live," Marcus said, his tone casual, almost dismissive. "Funny how things work out, isn't it? People who dig too deep into other folks' business sometimes get warnings to back off." The way he said that, so calm, so cold, made my blood run ice cold. "What do you mean by that?" I challenged him, my voice harder than before. He offered a thin smile. "Nothing specific, Pops, just speaking generally." He moved to sit down on my couch, spreading his arms across the back like he owned the place. "Sit, we need to talk." I sat across from him, every muscle in my body tense. "I think your condition is getting worse," Marcus said bluntly, leaning forward. "You're hearing voices, seeing people who aren't there. Now your nephew has an accident right outside your house. It could all be connected to stress, lack of sleep, confused thinking." "I'm not crazy, Marcus," I said firmly. "I didn't say you were crazy," he replied smoothly. "But Pops, you found that old letter from Kaisha. You're letting grief twist your memories. You're seeing conspiracies where there aren't any. Kaisha told me not to trust you." I blurted out, my voice rising. "She warned me." His eyes narrowed for just a second, a flash of something dark, but he quickly recovered that gentle therapist expression. "That letter you found was written by a stressed young woman dealing with relationship problems," he said calmly. "But she's gone now, Pops. It's just you and me. We're family. All we got left." The word family felt like a trap closing around me. "That's why," Marcus continued, staring at me with those calculating eyes, "I think it's time we talked seriously about your living situation. You can't keep going like this alone, confused, vulnerable. I think you should move into a senior living facility. A good one, with nurses and doctors around the clock. I'll handle all the paperwork, all the finances. You won't have to worry about a thing." I remembered the woman at the table, Kaisha, or whoever she was, saying, "He's not going to stop until he silences you." "Let me think about it," I said slowly. Carefully. Marcus sighed, standing up and smoothing his shirt. "Don't take too long, Pops. Every day you stay here alone, something could happen. A fall, a fire, another ... episode." He walked toward the door and turned back. "I care about you. I don't want you to get lost." When he closed that door behind him, I stood frozen. The word lost sounded less like confused and more like disappeared. My phone buzzed. A text from Jamal at the hospital, a photo of his leg in a cast, his face tired but defiant. "Uncle D, I'm alive. Don't worry." But the mechanic looked at my bike, said there was a loose bolt in the brake line, like someone deliberately loosened it. "Be careful." Another message came through seconds later. I got the contact info for that couple Sharon mentioned, the ones who adopted a baby from Dr. Hayes, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. They live in Brightmoor. If you feel up to it, go talk to them. "I'll help from here." I texted back immediately. "I'm going." The Anderson house was small, but well-kept yellow siding. Flower boxes in the windows, even though it was winter. A little garden gnome by the front steps. I took a lift there the next afternoon. Clutching that folder of clinic documents. Mrs. Anderson opened the door, a thin black woman with kind eyes and worry lines deep in her face. "Yes, can I help you?" "Ma'am, I'm Deshaun Williams," I said gently. "They gave me your information at East Side Community Clinic. I'm trying to find answers about a birth that happened there 40 years ago." Her whole body tensed. "We already told them everything we know," she said quickly, defensively. "We're not to blame for anything. We just wanted a child. We're good people." "I'm good people too, ma'am," I replied. "And I also just wanted to raise my child right. May I come in for just a few minutes?" She looked back into the house, then at me again, hesitating. Finally, she opened the door wider. "Come in." Her husband, Mr. Anderson, was sitting in a worn armchair, white hair, trembling hands, eyes that had seen too much hardship. They both looked tired, like carrying a secret for 40 years had aged them beyond their time. I sat on their couch and opened my folder on their coffee table. 40 years ago, I began, my wife Gloria gave birth at that clinic. Dr. Samuel Hayes signed the birth certificate. On my papers, there are erased numbers and strange notes. All I want to know is if the baby you adopted might have any connection to me. They looked at each other, a whole conversation passing between them in silence. Mrs. Anderson's lips started trembling. "Tell him, Leonard," she whispered to her husband. "We can't keep carrying this anymore." Mr. Anderson closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and spoke. "We were desperate," he said, his voice rough with age and regret. "We'd been trying for years to have a baby. Couldn't. Someone at our church told us about Dr. Hayes, said he helped couples in our situation. We went to him. We paid him money we didn't really have." "How much?" I asked quietly. $5,000, Mrs. Anderson said. It was everything we'd saved. Dr. Hayes said the baby was from a mother who couldn't keep her, said the baby would have a better life with us. He told us not to ask questions, not to dig, and we were so desperate, so happy to finally have a child, we didn't ask. "Where is that child now?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Here with us," Mrs. Anderson replied. "We named her Ayana. She's grown now, 39 years old. But she's been struggling for years, trying to understand who she really is. She knows she's adopted. She's always felt like something was missing, like she didn't quite fit. That's why we took her to therapy," Mr. Anderson added, "to help her deal with the pain of not knowing her real family." My chest tightened. "What therapist?" "Dr. Marcus Bennett," Mrs. Anderson said. "Very successful man, has a practice over in Midtown. He'd been on the news after his wife died in that terrible car accident. Our Ayana saw his wife's picture in the paper and said she looked just like her could-have-been sisters. That's when we knew she needed help processing all that confusion." The room started spinning. "How long has she been seeing him?" "About a year after his wife's accident," Mr. Anderson said. "She was doing better at first. Then she started coming home late from sessions, sometimes looking upset, sometimes soaking wet, like she'd been standing in the rain. When we asked about it, she'd get defensive, tell us we didn't understand her pain. I had the image of that woman in the gray hoodie, standing at my door in the rain, and the certainty that Marcus was at the center of everything, pulling strings, manipulating minds, playing God with people's lives. "Can I meet her?" I asked, my voice barely working. "Can I meet Ayana?" Mrs. Anderson nodded slowly. "She's upstairs. Let me get her." A few minutes later, footsteps came down the stairs, and there she stood in the doorway, Kaisha's face, Kaisha's height, Kaisha's hands. But not Kaisha. Someone else who shared the same blood, the same beginning. "This is Mr. Williams," Mrs. Anderson said softly. He thinks you might be his daughter, too. Ayanna looked at me with eyes full of confusion and hope and fear all mixed together. What do you mean? She whispered. I stood up slowly, tears already falling. I think, I said, my voice breaking, that when you were born, you had a twin sister named Kaisha. And I think someone took you away from us before we even knew you existed. She took a step closer, studying my face. I've been dreaming about you, she said, her voice shaking. For years, I've dreamed about an older black man calling me daughter in a voice that made my heart hurt. Was that you? Yes, I whispered. That was me. We stood there crying, two strangers connected by blood and theft and 40 years of lies. Mrs. Anderson was crying too. Mr. Anderson had his head in his hands. Dr. Bennett, Ayanna finally said, wiping her eyes. He told me you abandoned me. He showed me DNA results, said you chose Kaisha, and threw me away like I was nothing. He said you deserved to suffer. That's a lie, I said firmly, taking her hands in mine. I never knew you existed until 3 days ago. Baby girl, if I'd known, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you. He used me, she said, her voice breaking. He told me to call you at 1 o'clock in the morning, to scare you, to leave the doll at the grave. He said it was justice. He said you needed to pay for what you did to me. But you didn't do anything, did you? No, baby, I said. The person who needs to pay is Marcus, and we're going to make sure he does. That night, I didn't wait for 1 a.m. I called Detective Morrison at Detroit PD, a friend of Jamal's, who'd been following our investigation. I gave him everything, the clinic documents, the recordings, Ayanna's testimony, the mechanic's report on Jamal's brakes. This is enough for a warrant, Morrison said. We'll bring him in for questioning tomorrow morning. They arrested Marcus at his clinic the next day. When the news broke, it was everywhere. Prominent Detroit therapist arrested in wife's death investigation. They found evidence on his computer searches about disabling airbags, messages to the mechanic who'd worked on Kaisha's car, financial records showing he'd taken out a life, insurance policy on her just months before the accident. The trial took months. But in the end, justice came. Marcus was convicted of second-degree murder. Watching him get led away in handcuffs, I didn't feel joy. I just felt tired and sad for all the years we'd lost. Ayanna and I started building a relationship slow, careful, like two people learning to walk on new legs. She came to Sunday dinners. We visited Kaisha's grave together. Jamal recovered and did a whole podcast series on the case that went viral. One night, months later, I woke up at 1 a.m. out of habit. I walked to the living room and looked at the phone. It didn't ring. The house was quiet, except for the sound of Ayanna sleeping in the guest room down the hall. The room that used to be Kaisha's. Stood at the front door and looked through the peephole. Nobody was there. Just the quiet Detroit night, peaceful and still. Thank you, Kaisha, I whispered to the darkness. Thank you for bringing your sister home. And for the first time in 4 years, I felt something like peace settle over my tired heart. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. Hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know this story reached you, because sometimes the truth takes 40 years to come out, but when it does, it sets you free.